Grease covered Tom Blake's hands as he crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel of a draconic warship. The metal around him hummed with alien energy, and strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. He had been fixing alien ships for 15 years now, ever since humanity became the galaxy's go-to mechanics. Nobody else wanted to get their hands dirty with the complicated insides of starships, but humans seemed to have a natural talent for it. The work paid well, but it was lonely. Most aliens looked down on humans as simple repair workers. They brought their broken ships to the orbital yards above Earth, dropped them off, and came back when the work was done. No conversation, no friendship, just business. Tom reached the waste disposal unit and started his routine check. These draconic ships were massive, built for creatures the size of small buildings. Everything was oversized compared to human equipment. The waste systems alone were bigger than some human apartments. He opened the main chamber and immediately smelled something wrong. Instead of the usual chemical waste, there was something else, something that smelled like wet fur and fear. Tom pulled out his flashlight and peered inside. At first, he thought it was debris, maybe some torn fabric or broken equipment. Then it moved. A tiny dragon lay curled in the corner of the waste chamber. Its scales were dull gray instead of the brilliant colors Tom had seen on adult draconic warriors. The creature was no bigger than a house cat, with wings folded tight against its body. Its breathing was shallow and quick. Tom had never seen a baby dragon before. Adult dragons were proud, powerful beings who ruled their own star systems. They stood 12 feet tall and could breathe plasma hot enough to melt steel. This little thing looked like it might die if someone spoke too loudly near it. The dragon's eyes opened slowly. They were the same golden color as adult dragons, but filled with pain and exhaustion. The little creature tried to lift its head and speak. Its voice came out as barely a whisper in broken galactic common. "May I have leftovers, sir?" Tom's heart nearly broke. Someone had thrown this baby away like garbage. In the Draconic Empire, only the strongest survived. Dragons who were too small or weak were considered defects. Tom had heard rumors that they were sometimes abandoned, but he had never seen it happen. The smart thing would be to report this to station security. Let the proper authorities handle it. Tom was just a mechanic, not a diplomat or a xenobiologist. Getting involved in alien family matters could cost him his job, maybe even get him banned from the station. But looking into those golden eyes, Tom could not walk away. The dragon was asking for food scraps, probably had never received a kind word in its short life. Tom made a decision that would change everything. "Hey there, little one," Tom said softly. "Let's get you out of this mess." He carefully lifted the dragon from the waste chamber. The creature was surprisingly light, like holding a bird with hollow bones. It did not struggle or try to bite. Instead, it curled up in Tom's arms like it finally felt safe. Tom looked around the empty maintenance tunnel. The ship's crew would not return for hours. The station's scanners could not penetrate this deep into the ship's hull. If he was careful, he could get the dragon back to his workshop without anyone noticing. He wrapped the little dragon in an old maintenance cloth and tucked it inside his tool bag. The dragon seemed to understand what was happening and stayed perfectly still. Tom finished his inspection quickly, marking everything as normal on his report pad. The walk back to his workshop felt like the longest journey of his life. Every security guard, every camera, every alien passenger seemed to be watching him. His tool bag felt heavier with each step, not because of weight, but because of what it represented. He was smuggling a member of one of the galaxy's most powerful species. Tom's workshop was located in the lower levels of the station, far from the fancy passenger areas and diplomatic quarters. It was a cluttered space filled with spare parts, diagnostic equipment, and half-finished projects. Most importantly, it was private. Tom had spent years making sure nobody bothered him while he worked. He set his tool bag down gently on his workbench and opened it. The dragon looked up at him with those same golden eyes, but now there was something else in them. Hope, maybe. Or gratitude. "You must be hungry," Tom said. He rummaged through his personal supplies and found a protein bar and a bottle of water. The dragon ate slowly, carefully, like it was afraid the food might be taken away. As the little creature ate, Tom noticed things he had missed before. The dragon's scales were not just dull from malnutrition. They had strange patterns that seemed to shift and change in the light. Its claws were different too, longer and more delicate than those of adult dragons. This was not just a small dragon. This was something different. Tom set up a small sleeping area in the corner of his workshop, using old blankets and a heating pad. The dragon curled up in the makeshift bed and fell asleep almost immediately. For the first time in hours, its breathing became deep and peaceful. Tom sat at his workbench and tried to process what he had done. He had just committed what some would call theft, others would call rescue. In the morning, he would have to figure out how to care for a baby dragon without anyone finding out. He would need food, medical supplies, and a better hiding place. But looking at the sleeping dragon, Tom knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes the most important decisions were not about rules or consequences. Sometimes they were about seeing a creature ask for leftovers and deciding that everyone deserved a chance to live. The dragon stirred in its sleep and made a small chirping sound. Tom smiled and went back to his work, planning how to keep his new friend safe in a galaxy that had already decided it was worthless. 3 weeks passed before Tom realized he had never asked the dragon's name. The little creature had grown stronger on a diet of protein bars, synthetic meat, and whatever Tom could smuggle from the station's food courts. To Tom's surprise, the dragon also seemed to enjoy drinking the lubricating fluids used in ship maintenance. Most beings would be poisoned by such chemicals, but the dragon treated them like fine wine. "What should I call you?" Tom asked one morning as he prepared for his shift. The dragon was perched on his workbench, now about the size of a medium dog. Its scales had begun to show hints of deep blue and silver, colors Tom had never seen on any draconic warrior. The dragon tilted its head thoughtfully. It had been learning Galactic Common at an incredible rate, far faster than any language program Tom had ever heard of. "Dragon names are earned through great deeds," it said in a voice that was becoming clearer each day. "I have done nothing great." "You've survived," Tom replied. "That's pretty great in my book. How about Ember? Like a small fire that could grow into something bigger." The dragon considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Ember. I like this name. It has hope in it." Tom smiled and scratched behind Ember's small horns, something the dragon had learned to enjoy. "Ember it is, then." That day brought an unusual challenge. A massive freight hauler had come in with engine problems that had stumped 3 different repair teams. The ship belonged to the Stellar Trading Consortium, and they were offering a substantial bonus for anyone who could get it running again. Tom decided to take a look. The engine room was a maze of pipes, conduits, and fusion chambers. Tom had worked on similar ships before, but this one was different. The energy flow patterns made no sense, and his diagnostic equipment gave conflicting readings. He was about to give up when Ember appeared beside him. "You should not be here," Tom said, worried. "What if someone sees you?" Ember ignored the warning and approached the main engine console. The dragon placed one small claw on the control panel, and suddenly its eyes began to glow with the same energy that flowed through the ship's systems. The diagnostic displays lit up with new information, showing problems that Tom's equipment had missed entirely. "The energy flows are confused," Ember explained, its voice taking on a strange harmonic quality. "They are fighting each other instead of working together. Like this." The dragon touched another panel, and Tom could see the energy patterns on his scanner reorganizing themselves into efficient pathways. Within an hour, they had the ship running better than it had in years. The consortium engineers were amazed, but assumed Tom had used some advanced human technique they had never heard of. Tom collected the bonus and made sure to share some of it on high-quality food for Ember. Word of Tom's success spread quickly through the station's maintenance community. Other human mechanics began seeking his advice on difficult repairs. Tom found himself in the unusual position of being respected for his skills rather than just tolerated as hired help. But with respect came attention, and attention was dangerous. Tom noticed more security patrols in his section of the station. Other mechanics started asking questions about his methods. Worst of all, he began to see draconic officials in areas where they had never bothered to visit before. The crisis came when Pete Morris, a fellow mechanic and one of Tom's few friends, discovered Ember in the workshop. Tom had thought Pete was working a different shift, but the man had come back for a forgotten tool. "Tom, what in the seven hells is that?" Pete stared at Ember, who was calmly eating a bowl of engine coolant like it was soup. Tom's mind raced through possible explanations, but Pete was not stupid. The dragon's appearance, size, and obvious intelligence made it clear what they were dealing with. Tom decided on honesty. "This is Ember. I found him in a waste disposal unit 3 weeks ago. Someone threw him away to die." Pete stepped closer, his expression shifting from shock to wonder. "It's just a baby, isn't it? Look at those eyes. It's looking right at me like it understands everything we're saying." "I understand perfectly," Ember said in clear galactic common. "Tom saved my life. I owe him everything." Pete nearly fell over backward. "It talks. Tom, do you have any idea what you've done? If the Dragon Empire finds out you have one of their young, they'll consider it an act of war." "Then they shouldn't have thrown him away," Tom replied firmly. "Ember chose to stay with me. I'm not keeping him prisoner." Over the following days, Pete became part of their secret. He brought spare food from his own rations and helped Tom modify the workshop to better accommodate a growing dragon. Other mechanics began to notice the changes in Tom and Pete's behavior, their improved repair techniques, and their unusual requests for certain materials. Eddie Walsh was the first to figure it out. The older mechanic had been working the yards longer than anyone and had developed an instinct for secrets. He cornered Tom after a shift and demanded answers. When Tom finally showed him Ember, Eddie's reaction was unexpected. "Well, I'll be damned," Eddie said, watching Ember demonstrate his ability to interface with a broken navigation computer. "You've got yourself a miracle here, Tom. Question is, how long before the wrong people notice?" Soon, a small group of human mechanics had become part of Ember's extended family. They brought food, shared stories, and marveled at the dragon's rapidly developing abilities. Ember seemed to thrive on the attention and began showing each human different aspects of his talents. With Eddie, Ember could diagnose structural problems by listening to a ship's hull. With Pete, he could trace electrical faults through complex wiring systems just by touch. With Tom, he could do things that seemed impossible, like repairing molecular-level damage in metal alloys or interfacing directly with artificial intelligence systems. The humans began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. Ember was not just growing physically, his abilities were expanding in ways that had never been documented in any draconic records. It was as if human care and companionship were unlocking potential that the Draconic Empire had never imagined, but their secret was becoming harder to keep. Ember was now the size of a large dog and growing every day. His appetite for both food and mechanical fluids was increasing. Most concerning of all, Draconic security forces had begun conducting random inspections of the maintenance areas. "They're looking for something," Pete warned during one of their evening gatherings. "Or someone. We need to be more careful." Ember, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, spoke up. "They are looking for me. I can feel it. My old family wants me back now that I am becoming strong." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. He had known this day would come eventually, but he had hoped they would have more time. Ember was still growing, still learning. He was not ready for the harsh realities of draconic politics. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you," Tom said, with more confidence than he felt. "You're part of our family now, Ember. We don't abandon family." The dragon's eyes glowed with emotion, and for a moment Tom could swear he felt a warm presence in his mind, like a gentle touch from a friend. It was then he realized that their bond had become something more than friendship. Somehow, in caring for this abandoned creature, they had created something new and powerful, something that would soon change the galaxy forever. The Draconic inspection team arrived on a Tuesday morning, their massive forms filling the station's main docking bay like living monuments to power and authority. Admiral Rex stood 8 feet tall, even in his ceremonial armor, his scales the deep crimson of old blood. Behind him marched 6 dragon guards, each one a veteran warrior whose presence made even the station's security forces nervous. Tom watched from the observation deck as the dragons moved through the station with military precision. Their golden eyes seemed to catalog every detail, every face, every possible hiding place. He felt Ember's warm presence in his mind, a connection that had grown stronger over the past weeks. "They move like hunters," Ember whispered from his hiding spot in the modified storage compartment Tom had built. The dragon was now nearly 4 feet long and growing every day, but he could still compress himself into surprisingly small spaces when needed. "Stay hidden," Tom replied quietly. "We knew this day would come." But even as he said it, Tom felt a growing sense of unease. Over the past month, strange things had been happening around the station. Equipment that should have taken days to repair was fixing itself overnight. Energy readings in the human sections were off the charts, but not in any dangerous way. It was as if the station itself was becoming more efficient, more alive. The other mechanics had noticed too. Eddie Walsh's arthritis, which had bothered him for 20 years, had completely disappeared after working closely with Ember for a few weeks. Pete Morris found that he could understand alien languages he had never studied, as if the knowledge was simply appearing in his mind. Most dramatically, ships that Ember had touched were performing far beyond their design specifications. Faster-than-light drives were more efficient, life support systems were more stable, and artificial intelligence cores were displaying creativity that bordered on true consciousness. Tom had been trying to convince himself that these were coincidences, but deep down, he knew something extraordinary was happening. Ember was not just growing physically. He was changing reality around him, spreading some kind of enhancement field that affected everything from technology to biology. The inspection reached Tom's section of the station by midday. Admiral Rex himself entered Tom's workshop, his massive frame barely fitting through the doorway designed for human-sized beings. Tom continued working on a routine repair, trying to appear calm while his heart pounded in his chest. "Human mechanic," the Admiral's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I am Admiral Rex of the 3rd Dragon Fleet. We are conducting an investigation into missing Imperial property." Tom looked up from his work, meeting those burning golden eyes with what he hoped was innocent confusion. "I'm not sure how I can help, sir. I just fix engines and life support systems." The Admiral's gaze swept the workshop, taking in every tool, every component, every corner where something might be hidden. Tom had spent hours preparing for this moment, making sure nothing obviously draconic was visible. But he could not hide the improvements Ember's presence had made to his equipment. "Your repair success rate has increased by 300% in recent weeks," the Admiral observed. "Your techniques have become remarkably advanced for a human." "I've been studying," Tom replied, which was technically true. Ember had been teaching him things about energy flow and system integration that no textbook had ever contained. Admiral Rex approached Tom's main workbench, where a partially disassembled navigation computer lay open. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he examined the work. The internal components had been reorganized in ways that should not have been possible with standard human tools. yet the result was clearly superior to the original design. Interesting, the Admiral mused. He placed one massive claw on the navigation computer, and immediately his expression changed. There is draconic energy signature in this device, recent contact with one of my kind. Tom's blood ran cold. He had not realized that Ember's touch left detectable traces on the equipment. They worked on together. The Admiral's eyes blazed with sudden intensity as he scanned the workshop again, this time with obvious purpose. "Where is it, human? Where is the hatchling?" Before Tom could formulate an answer, the storage compartment burst open. Ember emerged in a fluid motion, no longer the tiny creature Tom had rescued weeks ago. The dragon now stood nearly 3 feet. At the shoulder, his scales gleaming with patterns of blue and silver that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "I am here, Admiral," Ember said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the workshop's equipment hum in response. "But I am no longer the defective hatchling you discarded." Admiral Rex stared in shock. Dragon hatchlings typically took 50 years to reach this size, and their abilities developed slowly over centuries. Ember had accomplished in weeks what should have taken decades, and his presence radiated power that even the Admiral could sense. "Impossible," the Admiral breathed. "You were marked for disposal. Weak genetics, insufficient growth rate, defective neural pathways. You should not even be alive." "I was dying when Tom found me," Ember replied calmly. "Your Empire's definition of defective was simply incorrect. I was not weak. I was different." Tom watched in amazement as Ember demonstrated his abilities. The dragon approached a completely broken plasma conduit that had been sitting in Tom's junk pile for months. With a gentle touch of his claw, energy began flowing through the device again, but not ordinary plasma energy. This was something new, something that bridged the gap between biological neural energy and technological systems. The conduit began to glow with the same patterns that marked Ember's scales. More incredibly, it started to repair other damaged equipment nearby, as if the enhanced energy was spreading from device to device like a living network. "By the ancient flames," Admiral Rex whispered, "you have achieved biotechnological synthesis. That is a theoretical impossibility." "Apparently not," Ember said with what Tom recognized as dragon humor. "Human care and compassion unlocked potentials that draconic tradition never imagined. Tom did not just feed my body. He nurtured my spirit and encouraged my growth in ways your Empire never attempted." The workshop door suddenly burst open as Pete, Eddie, and several other human mechanics rushed in. They had been monitoring the situation from the corridor, ready to help defend their friend if needed. But they stopped short when they saw Admiral Rex kneeling before Ember in what was clearly a gesture of respect. "Forgive me, young one," the Admiral said formally. "I failed to recognize your true nature. The Empire made a grave error in casting you aside." Ember moved closer to Tom, leaning against his leg in a gesture of clear loyalty. "The Empire made no error, Admiral. Your traditions produced a hatchling who required different care than you could provide. Tom and his people gave me what I needed to become what I was meant to be." The Admiral rose slowly, his mind clearly struggling to process what he was witnessing. A discarded hatchling had not only survived, but thrived beyond all known dragon development patterns. More importantly, this hatchling had achieved abilities that could revolutionize both biological and technological understanding. "The implications of this discovery," the Admiral said carefully, "extend far beyond personal redemption. What you have become could change the balance of power in the galaxy." Tom felt a chill of foreboding. He had been focused on helping Ember survive and grow, but he had not considered the larger political consequences. A dragon who could enhance technology with a touch, who could bridge biological and artificial intelligence, who could apparently spread these abilities to other systems, would be seen as either a prize to be captured or a threat to be eliminated. That is why I choose to remain with Tom," Ember said firmly. "Humans showed me kindness when your empire showed me only rejection. I will use my abilities to help those who helped me." Admiral Rex's expression hardened. "I cannot allow such a strategic asset to remain outside Imperial control. You will return with me to the homeworld immediately." The workshop fell silent except for the humming of enhanced equipment. Tom stepped forward, positioning himself between the Admiral and Ember. Behind him, his fellow humans formed a protective circle around their dragon friend. "Ember is not property," Tom said with quiet determination. "He is family, and we do not abandon family." The confrontation that followed would be remembered as the moment humanity stepped onto the galactic stage not as servants, but as equals. What happened next would determine not just Ember's fate, but the future relationship between humans and the most powerful species in the galaxy. Admiral Rex drew himself to his full height, his scales darkening with anger. "You dare defy the Draconic Empire? You are nothing but mechanics, repair workers who exist at our sufferance. Stand aside immediately or face the consequences." Tom felt his legs shake, but he did not move. Behind him, Pete, Eddie, and the other humans formed a tighter circle around Ember. None of them were soldiers. They were just working people who had learned to care about a creature that had been thrown away like garbage. "We're not moving," Tom said quietly. "Ember stays with us." The Admiral's eyes blazed with fury. "Foolish humans! Do you think your primitive tools can stand against dragon fire? I could reduce this entire section to molten metal without breaking scales." "But you won't," Ember said calmly from behind Tom. The dragon's voice carried a confidence that surprised everyone, including the Admiral. "Because you know that I am more valuable than your anger." Before the Admiral could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as the main communication system crackled to life. Station Commander Williams, a stern woman who rarely showed emotion, sounded genuinely worried. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple fleet signatures approaching the station." "Repeat. Multiple unknown fleets converging on our position." Through the workshop's small viewport, Tom could see the darkness of space beginning to fill with ship lights. First came the sleek vessels of the Stellar Federation, their hulls gleaming silver against the stars. Then the blocky industrial ships of the corporate consortium appeared, followed by the organic-looking craft of the Bio Alliance. "Word has spread," Admiral Rex said grimly. "Every major power in the galaxy knows about the hybrid dragon now. They all want to claim him." Tom realized that their small confrontation had become something much larger. The station's communication networks must have carried news of Ember's abilities to every intelligence service in known space. Now everyone wanted a piece of the miracle dragon who could enhance technology with a touch. "I will not be claimed by anyone," Ember declared. As he spoke, his scales began to glow with patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the station's power. Grid. Suddenly, every screen in the workshop lit up with images from across the station. Tom watched in amazement as Ember somehow connected to the station's entire computer network. The dragon's consciousness seemed to expand, touching every system, every device, every piece of technology on the massive orbital platform. The enhancement field that had been limited to their workshop now began spreading throughout the entire station. "What are you doing?" Admiral Rex demanded, but his tone had shifted from anger to awe. "I am showing everyone what cooperation looks like instead of conquest," Ember replied. His voice now seemed to come from every speaker on the station. Simultaneously, throughout the platform, miraculous changes began occurring. In the medical bay, diagnostic equipment suddenly became capable of detecting and treating diseases that had puzzled doctors for decades. In the agricultural sections, food production systems began working at impossible levels of efficiency. Most dramatically, the station's defensive systems enhanced themselves far beyond their original specifications. Tom felt the change in his workshop too. Every tool, every component, every piece of equipment began working better than it ever had. But more than that, he could sense connections forming between different systems, as if the entire station was becoming a single, integrated organism. The Federation fleet opened communication channels first. Captain Brooks, the Federation's lead negotiator, appeared on the workshop's main screen. Her expression mixed diplomacy with barely concealed greed. "This is Captain Brooks of the Federation Starship Unity. We understand you have made contact with an enhanced draconic entity. The Federation is prepared to offer substantial compensation for cooperation in our research programs." Before anyone could respond, Corporate Consortium Admiral Hayes pushed his way onto the communication channel. "Forget Federation propaganda. The Consortium offers real wealth, full citizenship, profit sharing, and exclusive contracts for any human who helps us acquire this technology." The Bio-Alliance representative, Dr. Vell, added her own voice to the chaos. "Biological enhancement should serve all living beings, not corporate profits. The Alliance offers harmony between species and unlimited scientific resources." Tom listened to the competing offers with growing disgust. Each faction spoke about Ember as if he were a valuable resource to be harvested rather than a living being, with his own choices. They offered humans rewards for betraying their friend, as if friendship could be bought and sold like any other commodity. "You hear that, Ember?" Tom said loudly enough for all the communication channels to pick up. "They all want to use you. None of them care about what you want." "I hear them," Ember replied, his voice carrying across all channels simultaneously. "And I choose none of them. I choose the humans who found me dying and gave me life. I choose Tom, who shared his food when I was starving. I choose Pete, Eddie, and the others who accepted me as family." The representatives from various fleets began speaking at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of threats, bribes, and diplomatic doublespeak. But Tom was no longer listening to them. He was watching something amazing happen on the diagnostic. Displays.Ember's enhancement field was not just improving individual systems anymore. It was creating connections between the humans on the station and the technology around them. Tom could suddenly understand complex engineering principles that had taken him years to learn. Pete was reading alien languages as easily as his native tongue. Eddie was performing calculations in his head that would have required advanced computers. "Look around," Tom said to Admiral Rex. "Look what happens when beings work together instead of trying to own each other." The Admiral's expression had changed completely. The anger was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like wonder. Other dragons had joined him in the workshop, drawn by the incredible energy readings. They watched in silence as their discarded hatchling demonstrated abilities that exceeded anything in their historical records. Outside, the various fleets began positioning themselves for conflict. None of them were willing to let the others claim Ember, and negotiations were rapidly breaking down into threats of force. Tom realized that their small station was about to become the center of the first multi-species war in galactic history. "Stop," Ember said, and his voice carried across every communication channel in the system. "You fight over me like I am property, but I am not. I am a living being who has chosen his family. Any attempt to separate me from Tom and the humans will be met with resistance." To demonstrate his point, Ember touched the workshop's main control panel. Instantly, every ship in the surrounding fleets found their weapon systems disabled. Not damaged or destroyed, simply turned off, as if someone had flipped a switch. Their engines, life support, and communication systems continued working perfectly, but their ability to harm others was completely neutralized. "How is this possible?" Captain Brooks demanded over the communication channel. "Simple," Tom said with a smile. "You built your weapons with the same technology that runs everything else on your ships. Ember can talk to that technology, and apparently it listens to him better than it listens to you." The workshop fell silent except for the humming of enhanced equipment and the quiet breathing of humans and dragons who were beginning to understand that they were witnessing the birth of something entirely new. The old rules of galactic politics, based on force and dominance, were about to change forever, and it all started with a simple act of human compassion for a creature asking for leftovers. 6 months after the Great Standoff, Tom Blake stood in what had once been his small workshop and marveled at how much the world had changed. The cramped repair bay had been expanded into a vast complex that stretched across 3 levels of the station. Where once he had worked alone with simple hand tools, now dozens of human-dragon pairs collaborated on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. Ember perched on his favorite spot atop Tom's original workbench, though he was now far too large to actually fit on it. The dragon had grown to nearly full adult size, his scales shimmering with patterns that seemed to contain entire star maps. His presence filled the workshop with a warm energy that made every piece of equipment work better than its designers had ever imagined. "The Stellar Federation envoy is arriving this morning," Ember mentioned casually as he watched Tom calibrate a new type of engine that ran on a hybrid of plasma energy and biological neural networks. "Captain Brooks wants to discuss another joint research proposal." Tom smiled. "Let me guess. She's bringing more offers of wealth and exclusive contracts?" "Among other things," Ember replied with dragon humor. "But I suspect she's more interested in understanding how we've managed to terraform the Kepler system in half the time their experts predicted." The terraforming project had been their first major success as the human-dragon cooperative. What should have taken decades of careful atmospheric adjustment had been completed in months. Ember and his growing family of dragon companions had worked with human engineers to create living ecosystems that balanced themselves, adjusted to changing conditions, and actually improved over time. The results had shocked every major power in the galaxy. Dead worlds were not just becoming habitable, they were becoming paradises that exceeded the environmental quality of most established colonies. The waiting list of governments wanting their own terraforming projects now extended for years. Pete Morris approached from across the workshop, followed by a young dragon with silver scales named Spark. Like Ember, Spark had been found abandoned by the Draconic Empire, though his rejection had been for different reasons. While Ember had been considered too small, Spark had been cast out for being too curious about other species. "The new arrivals are settling in well," Pete reported. "We now have 47 dragon refugees from 6 different Imperial worlds. Word is spreading that there's a place where the rejects and misfits are welcomed." Tom nodded with satisfaction. The cooperative had become exactly what he had hoped, a sanctuary for dragons who did not fit into the Empire's rigid hierarchy. Each refugee brought new abilities and perspectives, creating combinations that neither humans nor dragons had ever achieved alone. Eddie Walsh entered from the upper level, moving with the easy grace of someone whose 70-year-old body now had the vitality of a 30-year-old. His partnership with a dragon named Forge had not only healed his arthritis, but had enhanced his natural mechanical intuition to near supernatural levels. "Admiral Rex is here for the monthly coordination meeting," Eddie announced, "and he's brought some interesting news from the homeworld." The relationship with the Draconic Empire had evolved in ways nobody could have predicted. After the initial confrontation, Admiral Rex had returned to his superiors with a report that changed Imperial policy forever. Rather than demanding the return of their discarded offspring, the Empire had officially recognized the human-dragon cooperative as an independent entity. More importantly, they had begun sending their own problem dragons to the station. Dragons who were too innovative, too independent, or too interested in cooperation with other species found themselves offered the option of exile to the cooperative rather than facing traditional punishments. Admiral Rex entered the workshop with his usual dignity, but Tom had learned to read the subtle signs of dragon emotion. The Admiral was excited about something, trying to contain his enthusiasm behind formal military bearing. "Tom Blake," the Admiral said formally, "I bring greetings from the Dragon High Council and news that will interest you greatly." Good news, I hope, Tom replied. The best possible news, the Admiral confirmed. The Council has voted to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Human Dragon Cooperative. More than that, they are requesting our assistance with a matter of critical importance to the Empire. Ember's scales brightened with interest. What kind of assistance? Admiral Rex gestured to a data pad he carried. 3 Imperial worlds are facing environmental collapse due to industrial damage. Traditional terraforming techniques will take centuries to repair the damage, if they work at all. The Council wishes to contract the Cooperative to heal these worlds. Tom exchanged glances with Ember. The dragon's golden eyes held a mixture of satisfaction and something deeper, perhaps forgiveness. The same empire that had thrown him away as worthless was now asking for his help to save their most important worlds. We'll need to see the planetary surveys first, Tom said diplomatically. But if we can help, we will. That's what family does. The Admiral's formal composure cracked slightly, revealing genuine gratitude. The High Council also wishes to offer something in return: full access to Imperial technical databases, shared research facilities, and most importantly, the location of other abandoned dragon colonies throughout the galaxy. Ember's head shot up with sudden interest. Other colonies? Over the millennia, the Empire has exiled thousands of dragons to remote worlds, Admiral Rex explained. Most were assumed to have died, but recent long-range scans suggest that some colonies not only survived but developed in unexpected ways. The Council believes these dragons might benefit from contact with the Cooperative. Tom felt a surge of excitement. The thought of finding more dragon refugees, more opportunities to build bridges between species, filled him with purpose. But before he could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Incoming transmission from the corporate consortium, announced the station's AI system, which had become remarkably more intuitive since Ember's enhancement field had touched it. Priority diplomatic channel. The main view screen activated, showing Admiral Hayes of the consortium fleet. His expression was urgent, almost desperate. Human Dragon Cooperative, we have an emergency situation. Our mining colony on Titan 7 has suffered a catastrophic system failure. Life support is failing and we have 30,000 colonists trapped underground. Our best estimates give them 72 hours before total atmospheric collapse. Tom looked at Ember, who was already moving toward the communication panel. Distance to Titan 7? 18 hours at maximum jump speed, the dragon replied. But that's cutting it very close for a rescue operation of that scale. Admiral Hayes continued, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine fear. We know we've had our differences, but these are innocent civilians, children, families. The consortium is prepared to offer anything, any price, any concession, if you can save them. Tom made his decision instantly. We don't need payment to save lives. Ember, how many dragon partners do we need for an operation this size? At least 20 pairs, Ember calculated quickly. We'll need to enhance their life support systems, repair their atmospheric processors, and probably rebuild their entire environmental network from the ground up. Pete stepped forward. I'll coordinate the human teams. Eddie, can you handle the equipment manifest? Already on it, Eddie replied, his enhanced mind calculating supply needs faster than any computer. Within an hour, the largest rescue fleet in cooperative history was departing the station. 20 human dragon pairs, supported by 3 cargo ships full of enhanced equipment and emergency supplies, jumped toward Titan 7 at speeds that pushed the limits of their hybrid technology. Tom found himself on the flagship with Ember, watching the stars blur past as they raced to save people who had once tried to capture his dragon friend. The irony was not lost on him. Do you ever regret staying with us instead of going back to the Empire? Tom asked as they approached their destination. Ember considered the question carefully. I think about the path not taken sometimes. But then I remember that cold waste disposal unit where I was dying, and I remember your voice asking if I needed help. The Empire could have given me power, status, maybe even wealth, but you gave me something more valuable. What's that? You gave me choice. The choice to become something new, to help others, to build bridges instead of walls. The Empire sees strength as dominance over others. Humans showed me that real strength comes from lifting others up. The rescue operation became legendary throughout the galaxy. Working around the clock for 3 days, the Human Dragon teams not only saved every colonist on Titan 7, but transformed the failing mining colony into a thriving underground city with environmental systems more advanced than anything on most core worlds. The corporate consortium, true to their word, honored their agreement to support the cooperative. But more importantly, they began sending their own misfits and outcasts to the station. Humans who didn't fit into corporate culture but might thrive in the collaborative environment the cooperative had created. 6 months later, Tom stood once again in his workshop, but this time he was not alone. Dozens of species worked alongside human-dragon pairs, each bringing their own unique abilities to projects that benefited the entire galaxy. The station had become a symbol of what cooperation could achieve when beings chose to work together instead of competing for dominance. Ember, now fully grown and recognized as the first ambassador of the Human-Dragon Cooperative, spent his days coordinating rescue missions, terraforming projects, and diplomatic initiatives that were reshaping galactic politics. But every evening, he returned to Tom's workshop, where they would work on small projects together just like in the old days. "You know what I've learned?" Tom said one evening as they calibrated a new type of medical scanner that could diagnose illnesses by reading biological energy patterns. "What's that?" Ember asked, his massive head lowered so he could examine Tom's work more closely. "The most important technologies aren't the ones that help you control others. They're the ones that help you understand them. Everything we've built here started with you asking for leftovers and me deciding to share what I had." Ember's scales glowed with warm contentment. "And now we share with the galaxy, not because we have to, but because we choose to." Tom smiled and returned to his work, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others, and new chances to prove that the simple act of caring for someone could change the universe. In a galaxy full of advanced weapons and sophisticated political systems, the most powerful force of all had turned out to be the basic human impulse to help a creature in need. The dragon who had once begged for leftovers was now feeding hope to an entire galaxy, one act of kindness at a time.